Hi guys, welcome to this new video on UFC 241. So how did Stipe Miocic actually knock out Daniel Cormier? We're going to look at this in a little bit more detail because I think it's a very interesting way that this fight played out. So bunch of things. First of all, this is the fourth round, so you could see that Daniel was already pretty tired. My opinion, Stipe was also tired, but he clearly had more left in the tank, so that plays a big role. And it all starts going downhill for Daniel when something happens right here, in that he tries to hand fight like he has done several times. He just reaches out with both arms and tries to hand fight or grab Stipe by the neck. And what we see as a response is that Stipe lands this really beautiful, powerful left body shot here. Now, the next thing we notice is that this one actually does quite a bit of damage. And if you have experience sparring and fighting, you notice is that you know how hard you punch. Stipe hits very hard, and he knows that. And you also know that the reaction to your punches and kicks are what they are. So even if the guy is trying to pretend that he's not feeling it, you know that it hurts. And this is pretty much the image that we see next. And what you see, especially if you watch it slowly, you'll see that Daniel drops his hands and his head pretty much comes forward a little bit like this. And the result is that he kind of acknowledges the hit, not because he wants to, but because it hurts so much. If you've been hit in the liver like he just had, or to the body at the very least, you know how much this hurts. So as Stipe knows this Stipe clearly sees this like, okay, I'm gonna go for the body some more. And that's what happens next. The fight continues. This shot was really hard. You can see that Daniel is hurt, and Stipe very cleverly keeps fighting. Now, he doesn't rush like an idiot to try to land shots on the body, but what we see over and over again is pretty much what we see here. Stipe throws a couple of jabs more or less in the direction of Daniel. He moves around a little bit. He takes his time, throws a couple of lead hooks to the body, to the head as well. And then all of a sudden he nails him with a really strong body shot once again to pretty much the exact same spot that he did the first time. And you can clearly see Daniel's face. I mean, he's hurting. He is in pain. Now this happens for over a dozen times that Stipe tries to land that shot. Some shots land very well. Others don't land as well, but have a glancing blow, or some of them even miss. Doesn't matter. The damage accumulates. Unlike when you get a shot to the head, you can't just shake it off and keep going. The damage accumulates, and every additional punch to the body is going to hurt more and more. So that is the danger of body shots, and that is the strength of having a good hook or a good straight shot to the body. Same thing if you have good body kicks, roundhouse kicks to the body, shin kicks, that works extremely well if you know how to place them. And once you have the guy hurt, I mean, he's in a world of trouble here. And the thing is, especially when you get tired, and this will come back in a little bit, again, notice Daniel's face here. He stumbles back and he's out of position. Notice his stance here. He's totally leaning out of position due to the impact. The thing is that once you get tired, it's very difficult to overcome this kind of thing. It's easy to have mental resilience when you're fresh, when you just start a fight and then you take a good body shot and you can fight through it if it's not too hard. It's very different if you've already done 3.5 rounds and you've taken some damage already, you're tired, you're hurting, and you have to dig deep, and then you start taking these kinds of powerful hooks to the body. It's quite different. Even for a guy who's as experienced as Daniel is, you can see that he's having a hard time. So he eats a dozen or more body shots. And then we get to the final phase of the fight, and this is what it's all about. So what happens is, once again, he goes forward with both hands to do some hand fighting. So he's done that many times before. He reaches out with both hands, tries to grab or make contact with Stipe's hands, and then work his way into the clinch, striking, and so on. Now what Stipe does is very, very smart. It looks like he's going to follow Daniel and do the same thing, go for the hand fighting here. But what he actually does is immediately get clear of that hand fighting position and launch an extremely powerful body hook with the left hand. You can see it here, he's leaning into it, so he's leaning forward, he's creating a massive amount of torque with his whole body, and that was a very, very powerful shot. And the result of that was very clear immediately. We see Daniel stumble backwards and trying to recover. It's very clear when you watch the fight is that one hurt Daniel bad, and he's stepping back and he tries to recover. And here's the thing, what I mentioned before about the fatigue, it's one thing taking a body shot when you're fresh and then just staying in the fight. But if you've taken over a dozen, as Daniel has by this time, and you're tired, at that time, he needs a little bit more time to recover. So he stumbled backwards from that body shot. And you see that Stipe is very aware of what's going on. He notices the moment is there. You can also see that he's in a good stance. He's got his weight is centered. Both feet are at the appropriate width, and he's in a good position. And the next thing he does is very clever. He doesn't wait for Daniel to get back into some sort of fighting stance. He doesn't wait for it. You can see that Daniel stepped back with his left foot. He's stumbling around a little bit, and then he tries to recover. Stipe doesn't wait. He immediately steps in with his lead foot and he fires that left hand. And the result of that is that it's not really a blow that lands very hard, but it sets up the shot that actually does the most damage. And you can see here again, one of the downfalls of Daniel Cormier is that he flinches to his right when somebody punches him. So once again we see it's happening here. Again, easy to do. Talk about this stuff and not do those instinctive reactions when you're fresh, but when you're tired and hurt, very, very different story. So you see that he flinches here, and then the next thing that Stipe does is he lands a powerful right hand that makes a fair bit of contact. So you can see that it's got a full extension here. I'll get rid of all the other arrows here. So you got a powerful right hand here. You can notice that his position of his legs is pretty well here too. He's got a good stable base. He rotates well around the waist. I don't really like as much the drop left hand here, but again, given the fatigue and that it's late in the fight, we can forgive him this little error. Now, notice here Daniel is already swinging a counter, so he's trying to get this counter shot in here, but he's too late. We already have a full impact here at the right cross. And that is the key point. So Daniel's tired, he's hurt, and then he eats this jab cross, and the cross lands pretty well. Now here's the really clever part, which Stipe does here from the previous position. I'll show it here. He's going to circle out, and as a result, Daniel is going to fall forward in what we call the void, so into emptiness, meaning there's nobody there. Right now he is oriented on Stipe, but Stipe is going to circle out and then orient straight on Daniel, who will have to try to re-establish his position again. So that's what we see here. This is Stipe immediately pivoting away from where he just was after he throws across. And you can clearly see that Daniel's off balance. He's leaning forward, his spine is forward, and everything is falling straight into the void where there's no adversary. Now notice the angle that Stipe already is at. He's already aiming all his weapons and reorienting his stance on Daniel as Daniel is losing his balance. So that is an extremely dangerous situation to be in for Cormier because he's now extremely vulnerable. And obviously this is what happens. Stipe immediately steps forward and he launches a powerful right cross here that lands well. And this is the critical part here. So when you go from this pivot that he does, so from this pivot here, what he does is then go into a straight line towards where he knows Daniel is going to be. Daniel's right here. Stipe knows that as Daniel falls forward, he's going to be about here. So at that point, Stipe can finish his pivot and then go straight towards the opponent and launch a full power attack. And that's what happened. Beautiful right cross that lands well. Here's a tricky thing. People sometimes comment on Stipe's boxing, but here he does a really smart thing. He follows up immediately with a stepping through right straight. So what he's going to do is he's going to use his right foot to, after he lands the cross here, the cross just landed, he's going to follow Daniel, who's moving backwards, take a step forward, and then relaunch that right straight. And then it's stepping through straight, or you call it a stepping jab, depending on your definitions. Doesn't really matter all that much. But this one really lands. Daniel is pushed back because of the impact. It's a powerful shot. And here we're going to change camera angles a little bit. And this is the next right that Stipe throws. So he just stepped through his right foot, and then he keeps his momentum going. And that is a critical point in that his momentum, his whole body mass started going forward. Oops, that's the wrong one. Started going forward after the first cross, and then he keeps it going by stepping through his right foot, and then he launches that right straight on top of it. So he doesn't slow down. He keeps going, and that adds power to that right cross. That right straight, sorry, even though he is stepping forward the right leg, which means that he doesn't have as much of a rotation that he can put into that punch coming from his hips. So it's more of an upper body swinging, well, not swinging, but slightly snapping forward motion that he does from the shoulder. A little bit of hip torque, but not all that much. But doesn't matter. It's two really good punches, one after the other. And this is the part where, obviously, where Daniel ends up being in a really bad position. And here it just rains down several punches, and Cormier ends up being pretty much knocked out. And Herb Dean very cleverly steps in and ends the fight. So what can we take away from this? Daniel Cormier has a tendency to overly lean on the hand fighting and working his way into the clinch. He likes to use a hook the neck with a collar tie and then do a lot of dirty boxing there. And he likes to fight his way into that position using the hand fighting. And this is where it's used against him. Last fight, it worked really well for him against Stipe. This fight, it completely backfired. So don't overly rely on tactics that you like, because your opponents will obviously study you and use them against you if they have a chance. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the circular footwork that Stipe used after his jab cross landed, that was really well done. So he doesn't stand there to trade with Daniel, but he just lets him fall out of position and then attacks right away while Daniel is still trying to recover and reorient himself, as you saw in the previous pictures. And obviously follow through. You see that Stipe doesn't let up. Once he has Daniel hurt, he pours it on, and it doesn't stop until Herb steps in. So anyway, that was it. That was how Stipe Miocic knocked out Daniel Cormier. Hope you liked this technical analysis. I've got a bunch more already done, so check out the channel. I will also tomorrow do a post-fight analysis of UFC 241, going over the main card a little bit more in depth. You got that to look forward to. And also, obviously, you can follow us on Facebook, where we have a bunch more content there. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it, and talk to you guys next time.